Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. Isn't it nice to have this someplace to go to just sit down and be honest with ourselves? I really love it. I really love doing this. And I was talking to my psychiatrist today about just like at the end of our appointment, I was talking about still having that feeling of where am I going? Like, what am I doing in my life? I don't have that next position at work that I'm trying to achieve, or that next promotion, that next increase, raise. I don't have that. I don't have that outer, I guess, achievement, external achievement that to shoot for. And so she was asking me questions about it's okay to have that goal be internal. And I get that, and I can say, yes, that makes sense. But putting it into practice and actually being inspired by an inner goal, I mean, they're all goals are inner, but a goal that does not have a relationship with anybody external to me. So, for example, at work, I was a director, and my next goal was to be a senior director. My long-term goal was to be a VP. That was what I wanted at that point in my life before I had to medically retire due to my stroke, having my stroke. And when I think of all of that now, um, I see how my goals were set in or rooted in their relationship to the environment around me. I was trying to climb a ladder that was only, I created that ladder that I wanted to climb. I could have easily, and I had friends that were very much like, I'm happy being an individual contributor. I'm happy being where I am in my career. What I want is to go out and see the world. What I want to do is travel. I want to go to Paris. I want to go, fill in the blank. And those to me are more inner goals, goals that are about fulfilling something that I need on the inside. As I say it, it's not lost on me that my goals, those ones that I'm calling external, were fulfilling a need that I had inside. But it was like I needed to achieve something that was relative to other people, if that makes sense. And today I don't have that. I feel as though what I want to do, and I'm thinking as I talk, like I always do, but once I started talking to her about this, I realized like I'm taking this peer recovery support certification course because that is the next level. That is the first rung on a ladder that I am building again. So I think it's happening. It's just in such a different form that it's hard to see it now. How I am progressing through this, what I want to be, who I am now, and being better at who I am and what I'm doing. So I see it. I see it's happening and it makes me feel good. I said to my psychiatrist this morning, um, I've already started looking at the next class I'm going to take. And I told her when I was sitting in class yesterday, about, I don't know, in the afternoon, I was thinking, why am I doing this? Like everybody else in the class is doing it for their career. And she looked at me like she always does with this, like, you know the answer to this question because I have created a career out of my recovery. Like I have built my own career and I didn't pause for a second before I shifted gears and started doing this podcast and trying to broadcast my transformation, like what happened to me, my story of my alcoholism, my story of my stroke, my story about my vestibular disability. I immediately changed gears and started going in this direction. So being able to sit down, spend some time and think about it and like put it into words is super helpful to me. And that's why this podcast has been such an incredible help is that I get to sit down every day. Hopefully I can start getting back to every day once everything calms down. Once this class is over, and I can start doing it every day because it allows me to talk about my experience and gain wisdom from it. And that's what I really wanted to talk about today. I heard someone say in one of my meetings a couple days ago that we can't solve problems intellectually that require wisdom. And she said it more poetically, and but that's kind of what I got from it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, talk about cravings, talk about my early teens, drinking in my early teens, and how the signs really were there. My alcoholism, the red flags were there, and I wouldn't have seen them if they hit me over the head. But talking about them and maybe it'll help somebody else. And because I was experiencing the cravings in the very beginning, in middle school. When I first started getting to drink, I had the cravings. I wanted more. I couldn't just have one. I needed to keep drinking. I had, in high school, I remember like I didn't want to do anything that didn't have to do with drinking. Like, where are we going to go and how are we going to get it done? Which is funny because I was always a rule follower, but when it came to drinking, I did not follow the rules, right? I drank underage, but but with that being said, I didn't do anything illegal until I would drink. Then that's when I started to be a bit less cautious and I would do things that were a little more risky. I never really was terrible, but as in retrospect, like as far as being a rule breaker, but in retrospect, it was getting worse and worse over the years. It starts innocently and it just continues to get more troublesome. The things that I was willing to do for the drink and the things that the drinking made me do. Um, when I was in college, my slogan was drink beyond tiredness. And I'm sure if any of you who are listening who were hooked to my hip in college, you definitely heard me say that because when everyone else was ready to call it a night, I kept going and I kept drinking. I remember multiple times sitting in a dorm room and everybody else had gone to sleep and the refrigerator still had beer in it. So I just stayed up and kept drinking. Um, that alcohol was like a magnet to me. Before, like, gosh, I didn't even consider that I had a problem until I was in my early 40s. It's fascinating to me. I even had people suggest that I might have a problem. And I thought, people who have drinking issues, like alcoholics, they're homeless. That's what I thought. Like they look like alcoholics look like alcoholics, and that's just plain old not true. I have seen so many people in their 20s come into the sobriety program, and I think how inspiring that is that somebody is able to be that self-aware at that age. Somebody is able to want to live a better life at that age. It amazes me. I believe wholeheartedly that I wasn't ready until I was ready. There was nothing that anybody could have done for me in my 20s or my 30s, even though I exhibited full on alcoholism all the time. I mean, I was drinking every day from my 20s. Honestly, I was drinking every day back when I was in college. And not when I was in high school because I couldn't get it. But as soon as I could start getting it, um, I was drinking daily for years and years. There wasn't a single day that I wouldn't drink. I remember that when my mom went through breast cancer, which was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, um, after she did her treatment and everything, and she was fine. I signed up for an Avon walk for breast cancer, and so I walked 26 miles in a day, and then I could not move, so I couldn't participate in the second day, which was supposed to be another 10 miles. Um, But that night, after the 26 miles, we camped. There was a big campground in DC, and we all camped there. That's the only night I recall not drinking in my adulthood. The only night. And that was because there was no way to do it. Um, I would have brought it in my backpack if I could have, but apparently I couldn't even carry what was in my backpack. So, yeah, I mean, I was drinking nonstop all that time. It was, it went from being a quick fix for discomfort, even though I didn't have the language to express that, to just a norm. It just became a norm for me. And that norm was actually a quiet storm that was growing inside of me. Um, this momentum was building up inside of me from I guess the first day I ever picked up a drink. And it just became like a freight train. By the time I was even in young adulthood, my drinking was not occasional and it was accelerating. And so that train just kept picking up speed. Um, when I graduated from high school, I went to Beach Week, and I remember that being just the absolute best carefree week of my life, where I could just drink 24/7 and everybody else was just like me. Everybody else was drinking just like me. I didn't feel out of like different because that was what everybody was doing. Um, but what everybody didn't know is that mine never stopped. And I was drinking that way because I felt like I had to. It was fun, but there was something underneath it that was more like I needed it. Like it was a medication. I needed it. Um, and as I continued to have my life really be by enveloped by by alcohol, that feeling of loneliness got worse. And I always had it. I always had loneliness. Um, and I didn't even understand, how can you feel lonely and nobody else does? Um, I didn't feel lonely if I was with a friend, just one friend. But I could feel lonely if I was with more than one friend. Um, that alcoholism was deepening my disconnection. So I could be standing in a room full of people. You hear that a lot. I hear that a lot in the rooms. Um, that people say I could be in a room full of people and I felt alone. I felt like I was behind a glass, like really disconnected. That, yeah, all these people are here. We're all doing the same thing, but I'm different. And it's really hard to articulate. I'm actually feeling a little bit of an epiphany right now talking about it because I hear it so many times, but for some reason today I'm thinking of it a little more clearly, in that the loneliness was more like I was blocked, like there was glass between me and the people. Not not just, oh, I don't feel like they understand me. I don't feel like they like me. I'm not as cool as them. That's not the degree of the loneliness. The loneliness was like there was glass between us and I can't get to them, even if I tried, even if I wanted to, and they can't get to me. We are forever disconnected, and there is something between us that cannot be burned down. It is glass, you know? Does glass burn? I don't know. I feel like it must burn. Um, with intense heat. Of course it does, Rachel. It does burn because I've gone to a glass blowing, a glass blowing place. Yeah. Anyways, I'm just silly and not thinking. So getting to a point of wanting to live better, like I sometimes see these younger folks in AA and am inspired by. Getting to that point took me until I was 42, which being now 51, I feel like good on you. You did it early. Not comparing myself to people who are in their 20s and find their way into sobriety. There are folks that don't find their way ever or don't find their way into it until they're in their 60s or 70s. But some people, it doesn't get bad until they're in their 60s or 70s. So, being age 42 and finding my way into sobriety is a miracle, but it felt like I was jumping off of that moving train. Going to my first sobriety meeting felt like I was standing on the edge of a moving train. Have you ever, okay, I have a memory bubble. Back when I was little, we got a brand new playground behind my house. And what we had before was like, it was a wooden playground, jungle gym and stuff. Or maybe it was the metal one. And then our new one for sure was wood. So it was like a jungle gym with monkey bars and a slide and I don't know, kind of like whatever was good, cool in the 80s. That's what we had. And then they filled the whole ground of the playground, gigantic playground. They filled all of the ground with little pebbles. And those pebbles, they put so much there, they were so deep that you could just dive onto them and you would not be injured. So we did that. we would we would just jump and fall into these pebbles and nobody would get hurt. One thing that we used to do is we would, on the swing set, we would, swing forward and swing back. And when we would reach the point of being back the furthest, so your back was highest in the air, we would let go of the swing and we would fly under the swing and land on the pebbles on our stomach. I know it sounds terribly dangerous, but it was nothing for us. And that's what we would do. And coincidentally or not coincidentally, I ended up getting metal in my eye from those pebbles and had to go to the hospital and get it scraped out with a needle and wear a patch on my eye for several days. That has nothing to do with the story, but I wanted to tell you that. So what does have to do with the story is, when you are young and you make the decision that you want to jump from the top of the jungle gym. This is what we did. We sat on the top of the monkey bars, the wooden slat that goes across the monkey bars. And if you were super cool and super brave, you would jump off of the top of the monkey bars and land on the pebbles. And I remember one evening sitting out there. I hadn't jumped yet. I was sitting out there on the monkey bars, and I was not going to allow myself to go home until I jumped. So it was getting darker. The street light came on, and I just sat there, and I was getting cold, and I just sat there. I could not get the courage to jump off of that monkey bar. I just sat there. But I would not allow myself anything other than jumping in order to go home. I don't know. I must have sat there for a half an hour and I was freezing and I probably was losing circulation in my legs. Finally, I jumped and I was terrified. And I jumped, and when I landed, that pain in your legs when they're cold and you land on something really hard. Sorry, I just made the dog. No, it was me. It was me. No, I just kicked my legs. Sorry, I made the dogs bark. Um, that pain pain in your legs when you hit something that's cold on your body. That's what I felt throughout my legs. But I did it. I jumped. And that's what it felt like to go to AA for the first time. It was a mix of feeling, well, it was just fear. It was fear. But today I see that it was a mix of courage and fear and kind of the shock of turning around and looking at years of motion headed in the wrong direction in my life. Um, I jumped, but I kept getting back on the train. And eventually, after a couple years, I stopped drinking. And that was like trying to stop the train altogether with my bare hands. Um, Going to those meetings taught me what I wanted. And it's kind of like doing this podcast. I just keep doing it because it's helping me to understand myself, to learn what I want to get out of this recovery journey that I'm in. Just showing up, even though I don't know what to say, showing up in the sobriety meetings, even though, of course, I feel safer when I just stay in my room and pull the shades down, but it's an act of hope. Yesterday in my class, we were asked to define hope. What does hope mean? And the point of the exercise was that depending on each of our experiences in life, we would all define hope differently. And the way that I defined hope was that hope is when you can see a promising future. And the way that I figured out my definition was because I remember very clearly, and maybe you guys do too, from my podcasts, I remember what it felt like to not have hope. And I feel like looking back on my life, I have felt hope a lot. But what really stood out to me wasn't all the days that I felt hope. It was when I didn't feel it. That's when I knew how to define it because it was missing. I knew how to define hope by knowing what it felt like when it was missing. I shared in a meeting the other day that no matter what I did, I couldn't outsmart alcoholism. I couldn't outsmart my disease. And I got a private message from someone in my meeting who told me that we can't solve things by intellect that require wisdom. Um, and I thought, gosh, that is brilliant. I did forewarn her that I was going to steal that. So if you listen to this podcast, it is formally stolen. And wisdom only comes through experience. And what I have found is that the wisdom comes from the negative, the painful experiences. Um, I was talking to my psychiatrist today also about my kids, about how when they go through different things, as they face, Bailey buying a new car, or my son applying for other jobs and stuff like that. If something doesn't go perfectly, I look, all of a sudden, I look in the mirror and I think, what did you do wrong? Whatever, you must have done something wrong to that you weren't able to teach them this. Um, but the truth is that they have to gain the wisdom. And if I don't step back and allow them to experience painful things or difficult things, then I'm stealing their opportunity to gain wisdom. Doesn't that doesn't that make a lot of sense? Um, what I learn in my AA meetings is we come together with collective wisdom, and sometimes we come together with collective experience and we build wisdom together. And we're walking through the fire, we're surviving, and then we're coming back together and saying, this is how I did it. Or we're coming back and saying, I did it. Period. I did it. And that alone, I just walked through fire and I survived. That alone, communicating that to the group, to a recovery group, allows everybody in that room to gain wisdom from one person's experience. And that's what I hope to do here. That is my goal. I started off by talking about, I don't know what am I trying to do here? What is my goal? Well, I know that that's my goal. I know that I want my experience to help as many people as possible gain the wisdom. What is the problem that I'm experiencing? That is that I don't know that wisdom is being gained. I don't know what anybody is getting from what I'm sharing. I have no idea. Um, I just do it. I just do it. I always think it's fascinating when somebody, say for example, you go to a restaurant and you see a veteran eating alone with a partner or something like that. And when I see somebody, when they go to pay for their meal, they say, I want to also pay for that veteran's meal. And just let him know that his meal is paid for. And they don't want credit for it. They just want to make the gesture. And in a weird way, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just share and not need that uh what's the word, Em? I don't need that validation. Thank you. That validation that what you're doing, you should feel good about what you're doing because you've helped this many people. Um, but it's hard to keep showing up and being vulnerable and not knowing what's happening on the other side of that vulnerability. The only tangible reward that I have is on the inside of me, is knowing that my pain is not just for me, that I'm sharing it in order to, like, that I'm giving it away. I'm giving away the experience so that the wisdom can be shared. And somebody's wisdom that they gain from one of my experiences may be completely different than the wisdom that I gained from my experience. It's just a matter of saying it out loud. Um, I want to be a part of something bigger than myself. And when I first left my job because of my stroke, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to be a part of something bigger than me. I didn't know how my pain can be worth something, but I just knew that it had to be. Um, since I couldn't think my way out of the problem, I talked my way out of the problem. I shared it. And what I learned in my program is a problem shared is a problem halved or something like that. Um, I think that we were meant to experience the world together, connected. Um, and why not, if we can share our experiences to help transform more than just ourselves, but transform the greater good? Why not do that? Um, there's a guy that I'm friends with that I used to work with at my last job, and he started a podcast, and it's about the political landscape. And he's interviewing people from different states, from different political sides, and he's focused on, has our society passed the point of no return where we can't come together as one society when it is currently, or I shouldn't say currently, when it is split into two political extremes? And I would venture to say maybe three political extremes. But um, I I think that that's beautiful that he's doing that, because he's taking action against something that I think that's painful to him. You know, it's painful to me as well. It's painful to a lot of people, seeing how the world is divided, and he wants to do something with that pain, share the experiences of as many people as he can interview, share that experience so that we can all gain wisdom from it. And I love it. I love it. I'm glad that he's doing that. And you know what? I'm going to drop a link to his podcast in the description of this podcast episode so that if you're interested, you can catch it. This guy he's extreme, to say he's extremely bright is an understatement. But he has no idea that I look up to him. I think that he's a wise person. And I think that in a completely different way, he's doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. He's using this means of communication to help the greater good gain wisdom from difficulties. So, anyway, I'll drop the link to the chat. So, or I will drop a link in the description. Sorry. All right. So, so that's what I have today. I thought it was really a neat exploration today about how all of it ties together. How just my alcoholism, my stroke, what I've learned from doing my podcast, the disconnection, the all of it. It just all comes together for me. And so I'll stop there. Thanks for listening today, and I will hopefully talk to you tomorrow.